Warning: this episode contains spoilers for Thor: Love and Thunder.
I'll bring the love.
And I'll bring the thunder.
Let's unpack the magic.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Team Unicorn podcast. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Sammy.
And today, if you couldn't tell, we are talking about Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yes.
Just released this past weekend. We went and saw the movie twice.
We did.
And so we are going to go and give you all of our initial thoughts, everything we loved about the movie, some things that we maybe think could have been a little bit better, talk about everything and anything about this movie. So
Yes.
it goes to say that this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy episode.
Yes, lots of spoilers.
Yes, lots and lots of spoilers here. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, either listen to us tell you about it or kind of save the podcast for right now, go watch the movie and then come back and listen to this podcast because we're covering everything in this.
I do. I've said it before. I do not want to be the person that spoils things for people. So this is your warning.
So let's just jump right on into it. Thor: Love and Thunder. It's the fourth installment of the Thor franchise, and it's been a while since we've seen some of these characters back. Brief kind of just overview of the movie is that Thor has been off fighting alongside the Guardians of the Galaxy for a little while now. He is back in Asgard, and he's trying to stop Gore the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale, from essentially killing all the gods. That's a very brief.
Like in a nutshell.
There's a lot more going on to this, and we both thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I guess what were your initial thoughts seeing it for the first time?
Yeah, so the first time we saw it, I liked it. I thought it was good. I did have some, issues with a few parts, but after seeing it a second time, it definitely got boosted up for me. So overall, I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I would say I think coming out of the movie, I enjoyed the first time more than you did. I kind of almost felt like I could sense the negativity coming from you. It wasn't like an overall negativity.
Yeah.
But like I could sense that there was parts where you were just kind of just like, really? Like that's what happened?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I do think it's one of the best films from Phase 4. For sure here.
Yeah, I definitely liked it more than Doctor Strange.
Yes.
Multiverse of Madness.
And like you kind of mentioned, like seeing it the second time, because we went on Friday night and then saw it again Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
So it was still really fresh with us the second time we saw it. And I really appreciate the fact that we were able to see it a second time, just because there were some things that I missed in the opening the first time we saw it, and I guess just seeing it again for the second time with the hindsight of what the whole story progression was up, it really cleared a lot of things up for me. It made the movie more enjoyable.
Yes, I agree, because I think there's definitely a lot to unpack in this movie, and I think just Thor's journey overall, there's a lot going on, and I think there were some things that I didn't like the first time we saw it that made more sense the second time that I saw it and made me appreciate it more.
Yeah.
So
definitely. I guess like what were maybe some of the things that you really liked about it?
Yeah. So I really enjoyed, like, not to like jump too far, but the children fight scene at the end was probably one of my favorite, like still like one of my favorite things. Like I don't know. I think that's just Taika Waititi, like just like how his mind works, like just an army of children with the power of Thor for a little bit. Like, I don't know, the little girl with her stuffed bunny just like, I don't know. It was just, I loved that scene.
Yeah. There was, I mean, like you said, not to jump too much, but there's a lot of good storytelling in that last final third of the film, that last act of the film. I really liked that final scene where they're in the Temple of Eternity trying to get to eternity. And like, that's when the kids become, for a moment, as powerful as Thor. I really liked the opening scene.
Yeah, see, and that's where I struggled like a little bit the first time I saw it.
Yeah, so the film kind of opens up with, well, I should say the opening scene with Thor in it.
Yeah,
there's two different parts to it. I'll say like the very opening scene where you get all of Gore's background and backstory with his daughter and realizing that the gods don't care about you.
Right.
That was, I think, a really incredible way to give a lot of depth and character and emotion to this villain that you don't know anything about going into the, we didn't know anything really about Gore other than he was the God Butcher.
Yeah.
But I think, really putting that as the main emphasis in this story between Gore and losing his daughter as the main focal point for the first like 5-6 minutes of the film, I think that was a very smart decision.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate that being the opening of the movie. Because that way it doesn't matter. You don't need any more explanation or plots in, extra plot devices throughout the movie to realize, okay, this is why Gore is doing what he's doing. You get it out right in front ahead of time. So when you get into the actual story involving Thor and Jane and Valkyrie and Korg, like you don't need to know. Like they didn't need to like to splice in little like more background. It was all right there.
Because you knew where he was coming from, and you knew like after he gets the
necro sword.
Yeah, the necro sword. Like you know what his mission is. You know what he's doing. So you don't need to have like cutscenes or whatever like to kind of show what he's up to.
Yeah, and that was really nice because like I think sometimes in Marvel movies it works really well, but they take a while to build up to like the villain or what their story is or their purpose. Or sometimes it's a switch around like with the Mandarin and Iron Man 3, which is fine. I do enjoy that, but like just knowing the motivations and the anger of the villain right away. So that way you could jump right on into the story and not have to like wait till Thor shows up on Asgard to figure out who this God Butcher is and why he's called that and what his motivations are. That really progressed the story along, I feel, pretty easily.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job with it. Like they didn't like drag it out too much. I think it was the right amount of information and everything, like what you needed to know about him. And
so after focusing on Gore and his daughter, then you jump right into Thor being with the Guardians.
Yeah,
and I think that was I really enjoyed that scene. That whole entire fight scene with like the Mad Max Fury Road like biker owls.
Yeah,
and it's all going off to Welcome to the Jungle. Like I absolutely love that scene. I loved it even more the second time because like I knew what was coming up and I can kind of focus on other things. It was so fun. It was just so action packed. Like that's exactly what I needed at the beginning of that movie, especially after going from something so like kind of like dark and emotional with Gore and his daughter dying, and then you're like, okay, Thor's gonna kick some biker bird butt.
Yeah, and I guess for me the first time that I saw it, I was kind of just like put off by the whole scene. I was just like, I don't get it. Like I feel like they were just trying to like overplay the humor on it, and I don't know. So it just seems kind of weird to me. But watching it again, and I think one of the themes throughout the movie, is the love theme or whatever. So when he gets that or when he sees Thor sees the distress call from Lady Sif, it's kind of opening up like his world of love, and just realizing like how important that is. So I get it. Like I understand more of the scene, and like I'm okay with it, and I was able to enjoy it more the second time.
Yeah, I mean it was such a fun scene, and after he defeats the birds, these biker owls, but then destroys the whole city. That's when he gets into
sacred temple.
the sacred temple. You know, and you get to that point where, okay, they are finished. They're back on the ship, and that's where they see that distress call from Lady Sif. I really think that's kind of triggers Thor into kind of like that depression that he had been feeling for so long, that oh yeah, like as much as like I'm not really, I guess, opening myself up to the Guardians, there's someone who I have opened myself up to and I have loved as a family member or as a warrior in the past is now reaching out to me. And then I think that was kind of just like a triggering moment for Thor.
Yeah, because well, and I guess like I mean, I don't know exactly what they've been up to, but it kind of seems like they've just been like going into these battles, you know, fighting the good fight, you know, and, you know, just coming in, winning and saving the day. And it's just kind of like this like routine that they have going on. And I think that's what they were trying to show. And I think I just kind of missed that the first time. You know, because as Korg is like kind of like telling the opening story. And yeah, and then he's, you know, sees the distress call from Lady Sif kind of like just waking him up from that almost, like, you know, like, oh, there's somebody that I love that needs help and I really need to like go do this. But then there's lots of like distress calls because Gore's out there doing his thing, and then that's when they split up from the
and I'm interested to see how Guardians 3 is going to interpret that, if they're going to like make that like a big plot point, or is that just going to be like, oh well, Thor's on his own, we're not gods, and this is just like Quill's and Rocket's like way of like trying to get rid of Thor. Especially like I think Peter Quill and Thor, they just don't see eye to eye, so this is probably like, because like Peter was really quick with like, well, maybe we should split up. And I think that was more or less just Peter's like, I'm not going to do anything with this. Thor can go handle this all on his own. Like, I've got other Guardian stuff to do.
Right. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
To see what happens with that.
But speaking of, you know, this love with, you know, hearing from Sif again, Thor does go back to New Asgard with Korg and some awesome goats, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then he does get reacquainted with another love. With Jane Foster. And I absolutely love the character of Jane Foster. I was very excited to see that not only Natalie Portman and Jane Foster were going to be back in this film, but they were actually going to go the mighty Thor. She was going to wield the hammer kind of storyline. Knowing what I know about the comics in the past, I was really hoping, and when they wound up doing this, her storyline from the comics is that she has cancer, and the way that she can cope with having, you know, this cancer take over her body is that once she becomes worthy enough to hold on to Mjolnir or Mew Mew or Jonathan, or whatever you call him, you know, then she transforms into mighty Thor, and that's where she gets all of her stamina back, and she can, you know, fight the good fight and, you know, be worthy. I was very excited to see how that played out, and I think it was a really awesome transformation into Jane. I guess you didn't know too much about the background of Jane.
No, just what you had told me, because I know we had conversations before we saw Love and Thunder, because the last time we saw Mew Mew, it was broken, and obviously like in the trailer, you know, Jane's holding it, and I'm like, well, like how does that, you know, come to be? Like, how does
the last time we even heard of Jane, that you know, they were broken up, but it did not seem like it was. It might have been like amicable, it might not have been. Like, we didn't really know how it all happened, but that was just, you know.
Because we kind of like, we're like, well, is this like our Jane? Like, is this the Jane from like the universe that we know? Like, are they gonna bring in like another like you know, from a different like universe?
Like a variant?
Yeah, like a variant.
Yeah, that was something that I was very much hoping that it wasn't going to be. And I knew right away based on the first teaser, or I think it was the teaser trailer or the official trailer, where Thor was like, "Oh, it's been, you know, 8 years, blah blah blah." I'm like, okay, so it's not a variant. This is our Jane Foster. Not that I'm complaining about getting variants in Marvel movies. Like, I really enjoyed everything that we saw with the different variants in Loki and Multiverse of Madness, but I don't think that's I think it would have been almost like a cop out for Marvel to have a
Mhm.
variant to show up of Jane, because then there wouldn't have been no emotional connection to Thor. There
Right.
wouldn't have been any. It would have taken away any sort of, device that we could have used to move the plot along if it was just a random Jane from another
Yep.
random universe.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad that it was our Jane.
Yeah.
I guess, what were your initial thoughts of seeing Jane Foster for the first time?
I loved it. I just thought it was really cool, and she just played it so well, and I didn't know, like, yeah, like, going into it, like, how she would become Mighty Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, we had kind of briefly talked about, like, how she becomes Thor and, like, gets Mew Mew and stuff. But we find out that Thor had essentially made, like, a promise to Mew Mew, like,
To make sure to keep Jane safe.
yeah, keep Jane safe. So when she, is trying to figure out, like, her cancer and, like, what else she can do to help herself, like, Mew Mew is essentially, like, calling to her, and, like,
Right.
that's, like, her answer to help her. But then it's also kind of hurting her at the same time. But I loved it. Like, when they're on New Asgard and they're fighting Gore and his demon things for the
shadow monsters.
The shadow monsters for the first time, and yeah, she's there. Like, I thought it was really cool. I love seeing her.
Mm-hmm. And I thought the introduction, like, I was really hoping that in the theater more people were going to be like, because I was ready to applause, I was ready to, like, cheer and clap. I was so excited seeing Jane as Mighty Thor.
I know, but they showed it in the trailer.
I know.
And I wish they didn't, because I think it would have been such a bigger moment in the theater. But, like, we had all seen it before,
right.
So I think, I don't know. And that's why I don't like watching the trailer so much before like these, because I'm like, I want to see that stuff for the first time as I'm watching the movie.
Right.
But I guess, like, it wasn't a secret that she was going to be in it. Like, we all knew she was going to be in it,
and we all knew that she was going to become Thor.
Yeah,
they made that clear. That was I think at the San Diego Comic-Con Hall H back in 2019.
Yeah.
That's when they announced that Natalie was coming back for this, and, like, Taika gave her the hammer. So, like, we knew that it was going to happen, but, like, just seeing it, like, because I remember reading the initial run of the comics, and I'm just like, this would be so cool to see played out, and just finally seeing, like comics that I didn't grow up with, because I got onto comics kind of later in life.
Yeah.
But, like, I really enjoyed that run of the Mighty Thor, and it was like, this is so fresh and new to the comics, and it's finally coming in, and it was just perfect. I do think the way that they adapted her storyline from the comics was pretty good.
Yeah.
And, like, you kind of mentioned that every time she holds the hammer and transforms into Mighty Thor, it's slowly, hurting her. I wouldn't necessarily say killing her, but it's hurting her chances of fighting off this.
Right, because because we find out, like, when she gets back into the hospital, like, the chemo not that the chemo wasn't really working, it seems like, before, but even now, like, or it's even less now, like, it's not helping her. And
I think Jane had so many good moments in general throughout the entire movie. She actually had some comedic moments in there as well, like her trying to find her catchphrase, and she had just her fight scenes in general throughout the entire movie were awesome. One of my favorite scenes in the movie in general is just the big fight scene in Omnipotent City, when they go to try to ask for help from Zeus and the rest of the gods.
Yes.
I love seeing that when she throws the hammer out, it kind of all fractures, it breaks apart.
Yeah, it's like spreads out, and then it'll come back.
Yes, and it'll come back, and then just, like, I remember, like, on New Asgard, you just see them all come back, and it's tink, 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 and then it just starts to glow, and I'm just like, it's perfect. So I really enjoyed that. But I think where Jane really kind of flourishes, and you really get to see how well this character is in that final scene, in the Temple of Eternity.
Yeah.
And, her finally coming back to help Thor.
Well, yeah, and she chooses to come back, and she pretty much knows if she becomes Mighty Thor again, like it's going to kill her. But she just wanted to fight the good fight, and like she wanted to complete that mission, and she helped do it. And
like I feel like a lot of it, like I remember watching it the second time, like just kind of comparing Jane and Mighty Thor to almost like Captain America. Like she, like you said, she wanted to fight the good fight. She wanted to complete that mission. She would do anything she had to do. She would be the type of person to fall on the grenade. And I think that's why, like, I love the character of Jane and Mighty Thor in the comics, because she's like, she knows that the more she does this, the more it hurts her, but she does it because like she needs to do it. And I just thought that was just incredible.
And I think that just speaks to her character, because just knowing what we know about Jane, like she's not going to sit there, like with her cancer diagnosis stage 4, like it's looking very dismal. Like, I mean, you know,
but out of how many stages?
I know, out of how many stages. So like, one, I mean, it's just not in her character, I think, to just like sit back and let this cancer kill her. Like, if she can go out and do good and like do this, like she's gonna do it.
Right.
And two, the cancer's gonna kill her anyways. Like, I mean, maybe she would have held on for a few more months. I don't know. But I think if she can go out this way, like her own way, like taking up Mighty Thor, like, yeah, like she's gonna do that. So
in that final scene, or one of the final, that big, kind of big battle on in the Temple of Eternity, you mentioned where the kids are all in the back fighting the shadow monsters, and Thor is just getting his butt whooped by Gore. And then all of a sudden you see Jane, you see Mew Mew come in, and you know Jane enters, and it was just a perfect kind of like final hurrah for her.
Yeah, it was awesome. I don't know. I love that final like battle scene, and then going into like the final, like, I guess like death scene with Jane and everything. Like, I don't know. I love the ending of the movie. It's so good.
It gave me, especially like when her entrance into that scene, when Gore is just beating up on Thor really bad, and Thor's on his, you know, back, and Gore's up on top of him with that necro sword and just starting to pierce his
like Thor's
chest,
like trying so hard, like to,
and all of a sudden it just, here comes Mew Mew, pew, and just knocks Gore off his balance, and comes back, and Jane has that hammer. I'm like, that gave me Endgame vibes. That, like, again, another Captain America reference. Like, I was kind of hoping that they would have turned to Thor and said something like, oh, I knew it.
Well, we've known the entire movie, but
but that was such a cool scene, and she had some really awesome dialogue in that last little fight scene with Gore.
Yes, I love when he calls her Lady Thor. Like, she makes sure to correct him. Like, no, you can call me Mighty Thor, and if you don't like that, I will accept Dr. Jane Foster. Like, yes, please. I loved it. That was just amazing.
And it speaks so much to Jane's character. Like, I think that's why I was so excited to see her in here. I think a lot of people are going to be very happy with Natalie Portman's performance in this movie. I just wish that we would get more of Jane Foster. I'm hoping maybe.
We'll see. I don't know if her journey ends at Valhalla or if.
Yeah. So at the end of the movie, so after the battle, and Gore finally gets to eternity and is about to ask for all gods to be killed, or, you know, to be ended. Thor kind of convinces him that, you know, you're not looking for revenge, and you're not looking for hatred. Like, you're looking for love. Like, bring your daughter back. You know, I don't care what you do. I want to spend the last moments that I potentially have with the woman that I love, who is in her last moments. And I just really appreciate that scene, because you now know that not only is she worthy, but she died as a god. So then she gets to go to Valhalla, and we had a nice little surprise cameo at the end of the movie, seeing Heimdall again.
Love Heimdall.
In the comics, though, so Jane is in Jane realizes she dies. She realizes that she is in the afterlife and she's, being introduced to Valhalla.
Yep.
She can live out the rest of her eternity. In the comics, this happens to her as well. However, she turns that down and goes back and becomes a Valkyrie.
See, I would love that.
And I
hope that happens.
Really,
I don't
really
know.
awesome.
I don't know what Marvel has in store for her, but that would be freaking amazing because the energy between Jane and King Valkyrie is amazing. So I don't know if there's like a universe where they can team up.
If Jane were to come back and say, no, I don't want to stay here in Valhalla, I need to go back. I'm not finished with this life yet. And she goes back to King Valkyrie and together they build another another army of Valkyrie. That would be super, super cool. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I can wish I could be wishful in this situation.
I'm here for it.
100%.
I love where Marvel is going in terms of opening up their doors for more inclusiveness and more
just general representation.
Yeah, because up until I think the first 10 years, it's just been a lot of strong male characters. So I really love getting strong female characters, strong bisexual characters. I don't know, just anyone who's not a white male. I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but yeah, just the more representation the better. And I think
it opens up to a wider variety and a whole new world of storytelling when you're not just focusing on the Steve Rogers and the Tony Starks of this universe, because that's how it is in the comics. There's a lot to expand on. There's a lot of different cultures and orientations and just a whole lot of different avenues to explore that I'm glad that Marvel is doing a lot more of, especially now in Phase 4.
Yes.
So another thing I want to get into about what I really liked about this movie was the music.
Yeah.
I feel like this was a movie kind of like how Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was, where the music really set the tone for what we were going to see.
Yes.
I don't think that I can listen to some Guns N' Roses music or songs now without thinking about Thor: Love and Thunder. This was very heavy on Guns N' Roses.
Yes, lots of their music.
I think there was about 3 or 4 of their songs that were in the movie. I'm here for it. I love it.
Yes.
I think it definitely gave Mixtape Volume 1 a run for its money. It definitely led or helped to the 80s vibes that we've been kind of getting with Thor, especially from Ragnarok until now. And I absolutely love it. I think the song choices were perfect, from Welcome to the Jungle in that opening scene to Paradise City and Omnipotence City. That just, it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I commend the crew for picking those songs. I loved it. I absolutely loved the song.
Yeah,
choices.
and I love that too. I think it just, with storytelling, music can just elevate it and take it to that next step and really make that connection. And I love it when they pick such good music to go with the storyline, and they did a really, really good job with this movie.
Yes, very much. I guess so. We talked a lot about things that we both really enjoyed and liked about the movie. Were there some things that you didn't like about the movie?
Yeah, and I kind of touched on it in the beginning. The Guardians of the Galaxy opening sequence. But I think that was just getting more into the meaning of it. Initially I just thought it just didn't really serve a big purpose, and I just thought it was it was okay. The dialogue, especially Star-Lord talking to Thor, just kind of seemed, I don't know, just a little.
Yeah, and I could tell coming out of the first time we saw it, you definitely did not like that scene at all. And it definitely felt like after the second time you changed your mind.
Yeah. Well, because then another thing, Thor going off and fighting, I don't know what those things are called, the owl looking bird.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what the official names are.
Yeah, he pretty much gets his own battle with them, and they're they're obviously trying to make it funny, and because at one point, like, he's like up in the air doing the splits between like the two bird things on the bike,
which I absolutely loved.
I know you loved it, and I'm just like, okay, like, I guess it's funny, and I don't know. So it was just, yeah. So I think that whole scene was just a little weird for me personally, but going back and watching it a second time and kind of realizing there's a little bit more meaning, to it. Like, that's just kind of what they're doing at the moment, is just going into these battles, fighting the good fight, and going on to the next one until he's like intercepted with Sif, and
right. And I feel like
that up.
was obviously a lot of tension at the end of Endgame where Thor is with the Guardians on the ship, and they're kind of like, well, we all know whose ship this is.
Yeah.
And so it didn't really seem like Star-Lord cared, or didn't, obviously he didn't want Thor there. But when Thor finally comes into the battle, and he starts making his chants and cheers before going and kicking all these biker birds, like, Star-Lord's really into this, and he's like, yes, here it is, here it comes.
Yeah.
And like, he's reciting like Thor's like lines, and he's just kind of watching, and like, the Guardians, like, they're impressed obviously by Thor. Maybe not like how boastful he is, but like, they're impressed by him. And I feel like you can kind of sense that the relationship, at least on Star-Lord's end, is better with Thor. And he obviously is trying to comfort him and talk him out of this kind of deep place that Thor is in after he hears from Sif, and he's just like, hey man, like, we all lose people, like, but it's everyone, you'd rather feel shitty about having someone you love, you lose them, and then not, as opposed to not having them at all. So like, I don't think that he would have did that had he not been comfortable enough, or had opened a relationship and a friendship up with Thor, that was much more meaningful than just like, oh, like, he's on our ship now.
Yeah.
So I think, like, just character development between those two, I caught on to that really well. But I think that just that scene in general, like, I loved it. I loved it since the first time I saw it, and the second time I loved it even more. And I know that was something that you were kind of like about.
Yeah, and I don't know. It just seemed kind of weird, and I think because they were trying to, I feel like, make it so funny. Like, they were trying to make it very like humorous, and I think that's one thing, like, from Ragnarok, is like, there was such a good balance between like serious and funny. Like, it was really like, I think it was just 100% like accurate. Like, they did it so well. But then with this movie, like, especially the first time I saw it, I just thought maybe they played on the humor too much. Like, they were trying a little too hard. And then for me, that was kind of off-putting. And I don't know why that just really hit hard for me in that first like scene with them, like the Guardians and Thor, and like that whole scene.
I remember leaving when we saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I remember thinking almost the same thing. Like, Guardians 1 was just so funny. It was just like, everything was right on beat. It was right where it needed to be. It was perfectly crafted. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I think you were just, trying to achieve that same kind of lightning in a bottle. And I feel like that's exactly what they were trying to do with Love and Thunder as over Ragnarok. Like, you have a brand new director who's taking this franchise in a completely different direction than what we've seen these characters in this world in the past. And now you had that success with Ragnarok, and you're just really hoping to catch lightning in a bottle twice with this. And I do think at some points they did a really, really good job with it. But I think overall it kind of feels the same way to me like Guardians 2 did. Like, it's good. I really, really like it, but I don't know if I like it more than the previous film that came out.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, one of my criticisms, is that I think they were just playing on the humor a little too much. Like, it just, I just don't think the balance was quite as well as in Ragnarok. Right. So then I just think some of the scenes or lines, some of the dialogue between the characters, like, is just a little off-putting.
Yeah, and I felt that same way, like with the dialogue or the narration from Korg.
Yes.
I thought the opening dialogue was fine. And you had kind of mentioned that they did so the opening dialogue with Korg, where he's like, "Let me tell you the legend of the space Viking Thor," and like you're going over basically everything that has happened to Thor up to this point. In I think an attempt to basically say like, hey, if you've never seen Thor before, this is your first entrance to Thor, like I'm gonna catch you up on everything. So like this could be a standalone movie, which I feel like these Marvel movies need to have a good balance of being a standalone movie and still appealing to the fact that there's other people that have watched 20 some plus movies.
Yeah, building on what we've already like have seen before.
And so I thought the opening narration was fine.
Yeah, because that's like Korg's thing. Like he's just kind of I don't know. Like that's just like his thing about him. Like when he talks and he's like, "I'm gonna tell you this story here, guys."
Yeah, and I think wrapping the movie up with Korg's narration was fine because his first narration was like, "Let me tell you the story of Thor, the space god," and then his last narration was, "Well, let me tell you the legend of the mighty Thor, Jane Foster." My issue was with the middle narration where he's going over Thor and Jane's initial relationship and how they split up. At first I didn't catch that it was specifically like, let me tell you about how Thor and Jane first got together and broke up. Like I didn't catch that the first time. And I caught it the second time. And I'm like, okay, it maybe makes a little bit more sense on like, because he's setting up why he's telling it. I just didn't think it was needed.
Yes, and I think the only reason they put that in there I guess two reasons. One, to do the narration for those that haven't seen the movies, which I think Marvel just needs to stop doing because I hate it. Like, if you're a Marvel fan, you're watching these movies, you don't need to have like these retellings or like, or whatever. Like, and if this is genuinely the first time you're watching a Thor movie, like that's your own fault. Like if you're going to be lost, like go watch the other three movies, and two, I think the other reason they put this in there is because Thor essentially makes a promise for Mew Mew to protect Jane.
Yes, and I didn't catch. I guess I understood. Like I heard the dialogue. I guess I didn't connect the dialogue to what was actually happening in that scene. So like initially, like on the first viewing, I didn't catch that Thor's like, "Hey, I need you to promise me that you will protect Jane."
Yep.
And then you see the symbol pop up on the side of the hammer to signify like that was Thor bestowing like his powers to protect Jane at all costs on that. I guess I didn't necessarily see that the first time, which that seeing it the second time makes sense as to now you understand how Jane was worthy enough to wield Mjolnir and how Mjolnir reached out to Jane and said like, "Hey, I need you to come to Asgard. I need you to get this." Yeah. I don't think it necessarily needed to have a narration done.
Right. So so if they didn't do that middle narration of their relationship, I don't know where else they would have put that in the movie. And so if that were to get cut entirely, I think people would have an argument over why Jane could wield Mew Mew. Like, so she's just worthy? Or like, how do we know she's worthy? Like, why is she worthy?
Right.
And I guess for me personally, like, I would just knowing like her relationship with Thor and knowing who she is, and how she conducts herself, and like she's a worthy person. Like there would be no doubt in my mind like that she could wield Mew Mew, have the powers of Thor, and do all of that. And I don't think I would have needed that scene in there. Like, but I think they put it in there so that people weren't.
Well, and then it would also make sense
making that argument, like why she wouldn't be or something.
Right. But then it also makes sense for putting that scene in there as to why Mjolnir was calling out to Jane to come to New Asgard to be by the hammer. So I get it. It's just that middle narration just kind of irked me a little bit. And I
Yeah.
don't, as much as funny as like that scene was to the ABBA song and seeing them roller skate and Thor in a giant hot dog, like I don't really think I would have rather had that cut or that kind of that bit of information with Mjolnir calling out to Jane, kind of service somewhere else. If it would have meant that we would have got like another 5 minutes of another, creature, another character, another, dimension that we could have explored in this film.
Yeah.
That was my only kind of big irk of the film, was just, I think, like you said, like Korg's narration is kind of like his thing. And he's really, really good at it.
Yeah.
But I don't think you needed it
three times. Yeah. Yep. And like I said, I think that's the only reason they put that in the middle, was to show that specific scene.
Right.
Because then where else would you have put it in the movie? Or you completely cut it. And then I think there would have been some confusion and argument amongst fans as to why Jane
is all of a sudden worthy if we haven't seen her in so many years. And,
right.
I get that. So it's, it is what it is. Yeah, obviously you can't go change it back now, but like as a fan, that's just where I would be like, okay, that's where I would do something different, or I would change it.
Yeah.
But, that's just kind of Taika being Taika, and that's, it generally works. And maybe some people really enjoyed the narrations, just because you like hearing Korg talk and speak. But I think that maybe that could have changed a little bit.
No, and I agree. And I think that kind of goes back to like my whole, like, just a little too much humor. Like they're playing a little too much on Korg's, telling of stories and stuff. So yeah, I get it.
So obviously this movie was called Love and Thunder. And there's a lot of meaning behind both of those words and those kind of concepts throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
I think that I kind of touched on it. We both kind of touched on it when we talked about Star-Lord's kind of conversation with Thor before they kind of parted ways with one another, where Star-Lord was like, hey man, I've lost too, but it's better to have love and lost than to not have found that love at all. And like, you'd rather feel shitty about losing somebody than to never feel that way about never having that opportunity with somebody. And I really enjoyed that dialogue, because you definitely not only get to see, Thor be kind of comforted a little bit, but you do get to see how I genuinely feel like Star-Lord is a very good character. He's a very smart character, even though he might not really seem that way. And he's a very passionate, loyal character.
Yes.
And I really feel like he was a really good character to give that dialogue.
Yeah.
I don't think that you could have had, like, you could probably make a case for like King Valkyrie saying it. But like if Korg had said it, or Rocket had said it, like it wouldn't mean the same as much as Star-Lord, knowing what he has gone through with like his dad and his mom and Gamora. And I really liked that they included that meaning of what Thor has lost in terms of what love means to Thor.
Yes. And I think not only like love in this movie in particular, but I think love in like his whole journey, like since Thor 1, because I think in Thor 1, like he's just such a like a self-centered god. Like, he has his powerful hammer, and like,
and he has a lot of pride for him, for what he does and what he represents and his family. But like, that's kind of his shtick.
Yeah. And then he essentially loses that all. And then he finds his initial love for Jane in that movie. And I think it just kind of builds, like throughout the rest of the Thor movies. And, he essentially loses Jane, and along the way, like loses his mom and his dad and his brother. And, and then leading up into like Infinity War, when, he kind of takes it upon himself, like to build Stormbreaker, and goes through like that whole journey, only to come back and not hit Thanos in the head. Like, he should have gone for the head. And like, he really takes that to heart. Like, he let everybody down at the time, so he goes through like, a lot of like depression and like just closing people off, because every time he tries, I think, to like open up his heart or like try to do like, you know, bigger
what his heart is telling him to do.
Yeah, you know, he kind of like, I don't know, it just lets him down. And yeah, so I think in this movie Love and Thunder, like he learns to open up his heart again and, you know, realizing like it's okay to like be vulnerable, and you know it might hurt a lot along the way, but like it's gonna be okay. And you know, and then essentially in the end of the movie, like he finds a different kind of love. Like, you know, he, you know, essentially gets like his own little family, and you know, and with Gore's daughter, whose name is Love. So I think there's just like a lot of meanings, like,
yeah. And you kind of hit on a good note there, where he went through so much, and he's okay, and he can learn to be vulnerable, and he can learn that, or he's learned that, you know, it's not always going to kind of go according to plan.
Yes.
And I think that's what, before he went to go face Gore in the temple, he had this conversation with Jane. He's like, you know, I would love to have you with me, but like, that was before I knew that you were going to die. And I want you to be safe. Like, I want you to live so we can at least try to figure this out. And he doesn't get to make that decision for Jane.
Yep.
And Jane obviously does decide to come and help Thor in that final battle. And you can tell that he's upset. Yeah. Like, he knows that, like, this is it.
Yeah.
He doesn't get to make that decision for himself, or have, you know, his decision affect other people. Like, he needs to just realize and be vulnerable and be like, okay, this isn't on me, but if this is how it's going to be, like, we're gonna make whatever we have work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so essentially, you know, when they're in like the Temple of Eternity, and Gore has, you know, he's gonna go make his
final wish.
Yeah, his final wish. And Thor is like, you know, you know, he's trying to convince Gore, you know, to choose love, because that's essentially what he needs to. Like, you know, Thor is like, you know, you don't need revenge or, you know, anything. Like, in your heart, like, you need love, and you can call your daughter back. Like, you know, you don't, you know, have to go through with this like promise that you made of killing all the gods. And you know, Thor's like, you know, you just pretty much do you. I'm gonna go spend my last final moments with the person that I love. And yeah, I don't know, it's just a really touching scene. And then I think Gore making that choice to bring his daughter back, like, I think really speaks to who he is, like, deep in his soul. Because like, you see that in the beginning of the movie, like, he just wants to protect his daughter. Like, you know, he wanted to like shield her from like the elements, and, you know, praying to his God, you know, and in the end he chooses to bring her back.
Yeah. And let's talk about Gore, since we have them up right now, or we're kind of are talking about him. I feel Gore is such a great villain, because you, like Killmonger, you can sympathize with him.
Yep.
And obviously, like, he went full baddie. He did awful things. But I think he kind of lost track somewhere down the road of what he was really fighting this battle over. It wasn't because he hated the gods, because they didn't listen to him. It's because he lost his daughter because of the gods.
Yeah.
And a lot of Gore's intentions, as much as they are about wanting to kill all the gods to seek revenge on the gods, he very much has his daughter in mind, because he steals all the children. And that's something I kind of pieced together the second time I watched it. Like, his intentions, whether they were good or bad, revolved around children.
Yeah.
Like, he lost his daughter. He wanted to, you know, seek revenge on the gods who couldn't keep, or who wouldn't keep, his daughter alive. So what does he do to, you know, show this to other gods like Thor and Asgard? I'm going to steal all your children, because that's what my God did to me. He essentially stole my child's life away.
Yeah.
So as bad as like it was kidnapping children, like, he was doing it because of what happened to his own daughter, which I think looking at it in that context, or from those lenses, makes his decision at the end of the movie to realize what he was doing was for his daughter, not for himself.
Exactly.
That's why it was easy for him to make that decision to not kill all the gods, but I need to see my daughter again.
Yep.
Even though I am dying, even though like I don't have the Necro Sword, I'm going to perish soon, I still can have this opportunity with my daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know like he's scared to bring her back because he knows that he's dying. Like he's not going to be there to protect her or live out a life with her. And so he's like, she's going to be alone. Like if I do that. And, Jane is like looking to Thor, like, no, like she's not going to be alone because Thor's going to do the right thing and he's going to protect her. And that's essentially what he does.
Yeah. And that second narration scene with Korg, like they had touched on the fact that like, maybe Jane and Thor could have had children, and Thor was looking forward to that next step in life and having children. And I think that's another kind of part where it hits on where it goes from like Thor had a lot of familial love with his mom and dad and Loki and lost all those. He had romantic love with Jane and then he lost that. But now he gets back Jane, and now he has the opportunity to bring back and have this familial love again. Which kind of again is another kind of meaning behind that love and thunder.
And it's definitely not in the way that he probably had it planned out. Like, I mean, he probably, envisioned like him and Jane, getting married and starting their own family. But because of decisions like he didn't make, Jane making her own, and pretty much deciding that she's gonna die. But Thor gets what he needs at the end of this movie. I think just not in the way that he had envisioned the way it happening. But I think he definitely got what he needed.
Yeah, and I think the ending of it in general was appropriate. I think we've gone so long with Thor wanting to, kind of make amends for what he thought he was doing wrong in the past, or not doing the right thing in the past, not going for the head, or kind of acting out of fear and kind of vengeance. Realizing like, okay, it's all about love now. Like I need to have that part of my life back. And then accepting Gore's daughter into his life and taking on that father figure role, or Uncle Thor
Thor role. Well, yeah, and I just love it as they're like walking out into this battle, and like Korg's telling the end of the story, and like, and them as Love and Thunder. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I just and I just love like the kind of dual meaning behind those, because I mean her name is Love, but then it's the love that Thor was like trying to find, but like it's not the one he was thinking like he needed, but that's what he got at the end, and it was perfect. So I love that.
Yeah. So there was a ton of new characters in this film that I really, really enjoyed. There was a lot of cameos in this film.
There's a lot of cameos.
I guess let's just start with some of the main ones. Like obviously you had Zeus played by Russell Crowe. You had the Guardians all popping up in there. And I think as the story kind of progressed along, you kind of got like just little different cameos that may have been just kind of a spoof at one in Ragnarok, but now it's kind of like a full-fledged character. Obviously we saw Darcy almost right away in the movie. It was nice seeing Darcy back.
I love Darcy, and I wish she had more time in this movie, but
I wish she had more time whenever she was.
I know.
I love Kat Dennings.
I just love her so much, but I just don't think she was like as needed as Darcy in this movie.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering how the dynamic played out. Like, what was she doing between this and WandaVision and this?
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll get to find out. But anytime Darcy's on the screen, I love it.
100%. And then you got a little callback to Dr. Selvig, who's leaving a message for Jane. So it's nice to see him pop up. You kind of heard his name a little bit in one of the episodes of Miss Marvel. That just came out. He was mentioned as a scientist who'd been working on some stuff. So it's nice to know that like I like where Marvel plants all these little Easter eggs that like these, even though the character might just be brought up once, like, oh, you're like, oh yeah, like he was in like Thor: The Dark World, and like he kind of got brought up then. I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot about that guy. Which I'm very excited for this next character, Daryl.
Daryl.
For those of you who don't know, Daryl was Thor's roommate back around the time that Civil War was going on. Marvel put out, I think it was 2 or 3 little kind of like one shots almost. Yeah. I don't think they were official one shots.
No, I don't know what they called them. I don't know. It was just kind of something funny that they made.
I think it was just a DVD extra on the Captain America Civil War.
Yeah.
And I was very excited to see Daryl pop back up in here. I guess I just want to take a quick second. Speaking of Civil War, stay tuned in a couple weeks here. Our friends over at the Fan Club podcast are doing, if you guys don't follow them or know about them, they're the Fan Club podcast. Definitely go follow them and check their channel, their podcast out. It's a husband and wife that are watching all the Marvel movies together. She's never seen them and he has, and they're kind of their podcast is all about reviewing these movies. And I wanted to bring them up because we're going to be sitting in with them on an episode when we talk about Captain America Civil War.
Yes. So stay tuned for that. Sarah and Matthew over at the Fan Club podcast, they're pretty amazing, and definitely go check out their content.
Yeah. So I guess future Sarah, when you finally get to
when you finally get to watch this one,
get to watch this or listen to this, hi. Because I know she obviously they're not that far yet to be watching Love and Thunder. So it's going to be take her a little bit to get to that point. So, but I'm very excited to talk to her about Civil War because that's one of our favorite Marvel movies. But tying in Civil War, we got Daryl back.
Yes.
Like I said, he was one of Thor's. He was Thor's roommate. He was on Team Thor. When Cap and Iron Man are kind of off combining their own teams. And it was nice to see him back. He was the guy giving the tour, one of the new Asgard tour guides, and showing everyone to Mjolnir. So that was just an awesome little callback. I'm so glad they brought him back.
Yeah, when you recognized him right away, and you.
When I was in the theater, I'm just like, "It's Daryl!"
And I knew the name Daryl, and I'm like, Daryl, like. And then we talked about it after. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like that is amazing!" Like, because we watched those like how long ago? Like,
I know, and like that's something like Taika would definitely do. I mean, and something like he did in Ragnarok, which I'm glad was brought back over to this. We got Luke Hemsworth back as Thor, and we got Matt Damon back as Loki, and we got Sam Neill back as Odin.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so glad that they kind of
played
that's
that
such
again.
A shtick and such a random thing. And, like, it was a cool surprise in Ragnarok, but just to realize, like, okay, like they're actually like full-fledged members of Asgard.
Well, yeah, because like New Asgard is like a touristy destination now, so like,
which I want to go.
I know, right? Like I want to go like see a play of like, I don't know.
I just want to go to Infinity Scoops.
Oh my gosh, Infinity Scoops, yeah. I thought that was awesome. They brought that back. So then they're retelling the story of
Odin dying.
Yeah, well, and like Ragnarok. So then, of course, there's Hela in there.
Of course. And who else could play Hela?
Other than Melissa McCarthy.
Oh my God, it was perfect. I remember the second time we saw it with our family, and like my mom was sitting next to me, and she's just like busting a gut laughing. Watching Melissa McCarthy come out, and her husband Bel Falcone was in it too. He played like the stage manager, and they all came out and did like their bow at the end. I'm just like, this is so ridiculous that they stuck with this. I'm so glad they did that. It was so funny and so awesome. You mentioned it before. We had Lady Sif come back. Sif, yeah. That was super cool to see Jamie Alexander come back. I loved Lady Sif in the first 2 films, and she just kind of got lost and didn't come back for the third one. And she showed up briefly in Loki and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it's nice to see that Lady Sif is still out there. And you mentioned we saw Heimdall again.
I love Heimdall.
But I think one of the biggest cameos that we had in this film, which will definitely set up the future of the MCU, we got introduced to Hercules.
Yeah. So I don't know much about Hercules in the comics. Do you know anything, or like, do you have any?
What comes to mind pretty vividly here is I think it's actually the first introduction of Hercules to the Marvel comics, where it's like him and Thor on the front cover with Odin and Zeus in the background, kind of watching them fight. And Hercules is like, this is the day that Thor Odinson will die. So like they definitely have like, they are competing and they are fighting and they do not like each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that they are posing it in the MCU is a really good way with like, you assume that Thor has killed Zeus, which he hasn't died. I don't know how that happens.
How does he not die? Because like he literally had the thunderbolt go right through his chest.
Right.
Like, how does he survive that? Because
it's lightning bolts.
Okay, lightning bolts. Sorry.
I just say that because Zeus had gotten mad about that in the movie too.
But because we kind of had this discussion, because Thor isn't mortal.
No.
And gods in general aren't mortal because they eventually will die.
And we see that happen all the time. We saw that happen a dozen times in this movie that gods are dying.
So it's not because he's mortal. But then I don't know. Like, I don't know how he doesn't die. So I hope
he took that bolt straight to the chest and
then fell how many feet off his floating throne thing. Like, yeah. I don't know. Like, so that kind of puzzled me. So hopefully that gets addressed somehow, like how he survived, because I don't like that. Like he was dead.
Yeah, and this all happened from the mid-credit scene in the film. And it wasn't like Zeus was in like, it didn't seem like he was in a lot of anguish or despair or peril. Like it didn't sound like he was like actively dying and like his last breaths to Hercules were, go kill Thor. So I'm not sure if like we'll see Russell Crowe again. I just kind of assumed that he was just going to come in for one, and it made sense. Like, oh, he's getting killed off. Like they're not going to keep Russell Crowe in for another movie. But who knows? But obviously this was really setting up, another big showdown with Hercules, or with Thor with Hercules.
Yeah. So Thor gets another movie.
Yeah, that was so weird. Like, so we're walking out of the movie. Like, we just get up on, this is the first time we're watching it on Friday night. And like the first thing you said was like, why does Thor get an extra movie?
Well, yeah, because it says like right after all the credits, Thor will return. And I'm like, well, obviously he's going to return because of like the end credit scene. But I'm just like, so Thor gets this fourth movie, which also means he gets a fifth movie. Like,
I don't know if you necessarily get a fifth movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna play this Hercules versus Thor thing. Like, I don't know if that's like their next big like. I don't know. Hercules doesn't seem as big as like Thanos, so I don't know.
No, I don't. He's not gonna play like that big overall bad.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I just kind of assumed that they were just setting up another Thor movie, but it didn't. Yeah, it just said Thor will return.
Yeah, and Hercules, in the comics does like come on to help like the Avengers and work with Thor. So it's not like, he's just like a main villain the entire time. But I'm very interested to see where they take, I'm glad that they brought Hercules in on that. I think they needed like that other kind of god presence in there. And I think just in general, like we're getting really like godly and cosmic vibes coming from the MCU. I think in the end, we're all kind of leaning towards a Secret Wars kind of project here. So like this otherworldly cosmic intelligence, like it makes sense that this is all happening.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot that they're seemingly setting up. Marvel has been really, really good lately with, introducing like a holy crap brand new character that could like really change the course of the MCU in their end credit scenes. Like they did that with Multiverse of Madness, with Clea. Obviously this one with Hercules, and they just did one. What was the other one I'm thinking of? In Eternals, they brought Eros with Harry Styles. So, I mean, you're getting these big name actors with like these really like potentially MCU shaking characters coming in, and like there's just so much overload right now. And it's like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know where these characters are gonna pop up again. Like, I'm sure these characters are gonna pop up where I least expect them. I'm very excited to see where they go. I am excited for if it is another fifth Thor movie. I'm fine with that, because
as long as Taika Waititi is in charge, I'm here for it. Like, I've Ragnarok, like, I never would have thought would have been like one of my absolute favorite MCU movies. Like, it's definitely in my top 5. Yeah, so if he's gonna keep doing this, like, he just needs to be there.
Right. And I kind of going back to it, like, was it as good as Ragnarok? I don't know if it was quite as good. It was so close, though.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely not as good as Ragnarok, but seeing it a second time definitely helped, because I feel like the first time I watch any movie, like, I'm just so, like, on the edge of my seat wanting to know, like, what happens next, that it just kind of takes, like, that second time to, like, really sink in, like,
you're kind of absorbing everything.
Yeah, you know, and I think in this movie in particular, like, there was just a lot of, like, stuff to unpack, especially with Thor as a character and, like, what he's going through. I think watching it a second time, I was really able to see that more, and then I was able to enjoy the movie a lot more. But it still just falls a little short with Ragnarok. Like, I would still put Ragnarok as, like, my number 1, like, Thor movie.
Oh yeah.
And then Love and Thunder, and then Thor, and then Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, and I think I need to go back and watch Thor and Thor: The Dark World again, just because it's been a while since I've seen The Dark World, and it's usually on our lower end. And if you listened to the Marvel podcast, Ranking the Marvel Universe podcast, like, it does fall very low towards the bottom of the spectrum here. But I guess now, like, seeing Jane back a little bit more, and, like, I don't know if, like, rewatching Thor: The Dark World my opinion will change a little bit, knowing, like, what'll happen in Love and Thunder. But I think in general, it's so close to me. I think, especially, like, after the first viewing, I think that I liked Love and Thunder more than you liked Love and Thunder. I think after the second time, we're kind of even on that one. Maybe I have a little bit better score on it than you do, but I do think that it just falls just a little short of capturing that lightning again, like Ragnarok had.
Yeah, for sure. So initially we had given Love and Thunder, well, I think I had said 7.
I think you said 7 or 7.5, and I said like 7.5 or 8. It was something like that. It was like just a half a point off, and that was after the first initial viewing on Friday nights. Has your view on that or ranking of it changed after the second time?
I think I'd give it an 8.
An 8?
Yeah.
Yep. I think I'd give it an 8. I could maybe like an 8.5 out of 10 unicorn horns. But I mean, like, again, Ragnarok is right up there, 9. Maybe 9.5 for me.
Yeah, see, Ragnarok's like a 9.5, like almost 10. Like, I don't know. I think it's just such a perfect movie, and yeah, and for me, there's just Love and Thunder falls just a little bit short as of right now. But I don't know, because the Ragnarok, like, I didn't gush about it like the very first time I saw it. Like, it took you a couple times to really, like, appreciate the film for what it was. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe Love and Thunder, every time I watch it just gets better and better, like with Ragnarok. Like, I really appreciate that film, and definitely one of my favorite MCU movie films. So, but as of right now, I think 8 is where I'm putting Love and Thunder right now. I think I'm gonna give it an 8.5. Okay. I really enjoyed it. Like you said, it just maybe fell a little short, and there was a couple things that could have changed, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and especially seeing that second time, it really bumped that up for me. So I was excited for this. I'm excited to see where MCU takes Thor, and Love. From here on out. And I'm excited to see Love's character and, like, her powers, because obviously she has the power of eternity. To me, I don't know exactly what that means. But I'm excited to see where that goes. So yeah.
Well, this has been super fun. I am very excited that we got to share all of this information with you.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't mean anything now to say like spoilers.
Well, we talked about that at the beginning. But I would love to know what you guys thought of the movie. Did you love it? Did you not love it?
What did you guys think of the Guardians being in it? What did you think of Mighty Thor? Mm-hmm. I can't stop gushing about Jane. I absolutely loved her character.
We've been missing her for so long, and I'm really glad to have her back. And I really hope, crossing my fingers, that she stays in the MCU somehow. I think taking up a Valkyrie mantle would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Marvel keeps changing things up on us,
and they always surprise us.
So we'll see. Maybe we'll get something from Comic-Con at San Diego this year, or something at D23. But we'll have to see where the rest, where Thor takes the road here and the reins here from us. But that was our episode for today. Make sure to follow us on all the socials. We did make an announcement this week that we just got started on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, you can now find us there.
If you're listening us from there, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Really glad to get all the main platforms up and running here. So follow us on your favorite choice of podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. You can search Team Unicorn Podcast across all those platforms for us. Definitely come in and join the community and follow us on Instagram for updates. And you can always leave us a comment or a DM or email us at teamunicornpodcast@gmail.com. We'll take all of your suggestions to heart. We love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. I think that's just the best thing in the world, is making these connections. And that's how we are going to be teaming up with the Fan Club podcast with Sarah and Matthew. So yeah, we've been loving talking with everybody and making those podcast friends. So it's been really fun. Mm-hmm. So,
and even last week's episode was from a viewer suggestion or a listener suggestion. So definitely give us your suggestions, or what you want to talk about, or what would you like to hear us talk about, and we'll definitely kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but for this week's episode of the Team Unicorn Podcast, I am Tyler.
And I'm Sammy. And it's been magical.